So it is said that what looks like a conspiracy can often be attributed to incompetence and sheer cowardice. However, when it comes to the Jaguar rebrand, the disastrous rebrand, there is a coincidence that you may want to look closer into. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Ministry of Car. Firstly, thank you for the incredible response to the previous video on the Jaguar rebrand. We will be doing two things in this video. One is there has been a lot of good comments and a lot of good points raised on the comment section on the previous video. So going back to marketing first principles, I do want to address some of the points raised. Those are very good, sometimes rebuttals, sometimes builds to the argument. So I love that. So I'm going to address that. Second one, we will be talking about what is likely to have been the scenario by which this horrendous brand campaign got approved. There is a coincidence that I want to get into, but I also want to get into how a real big brand works and what is the decision making. And of course, drawing on my experience working on a very big brand, I will be taking particular examples. I'm not going to mention the brand I worked on. It's very easy to find. You can just look up my LinkedIn link in the comment section, sorry, in the description, etc. But let me just tell you how something happens, because something like this has happened on a brand that I did work on. Okay, let's get into the key points raised. One point that was raised, which I found raised all over the place, is that the purpose of this advertising by Jaguar was to attract attention, and it worked. So they won. Well, I'm clearing my throat on purpose because attention isn't always a good thing. Now, if you look at it from a pure marketing principle standpoint, usually there are three things that need to be true for someone to buy a product. They need to know about it, they need to like it, and they need to have it available for them to buy. So you could say that attracting attention will help people know about your product. But here's the thing. When it comes to Jaguar, at least for the prime audience that is looking to buy cars of a certain value, which is where Jaguar plays, everyone knows Jaguar. So Jaguar is not in the awareness raising game. So doing something in, intentionally attention grabbing just to get your name out there doesn't work for a big brand like that. So that's one important point, right? And if you remember the marketing first principles that we talked about, negative response to brand, negative emotional connect. So whatever advantage that Jaguar is getting by getting the name top of mind, even if people know Jaguar, maybe it's not top of mind. Whatever advantage they're getting by making Jaguar top of mind is more than negated by all the negative equity that they're generating. And on the negative equity, I want a lot of us to realize something about this campaign. This campaign is not a very distinctive campaign in general. There are a million campaigns that look just like this for fashion brands, for skincare, etc. What makes it distinctive is that it's a car brand like Jaguar that's doing this. If you put this entire campaign for, I don't know, H&M or some others, I know nothing about clothing, but any other fashion brand, nobody will blink an eyelid. This would not be controversial. It is only controversial because it's on Jaguar. Now, it's kind of a stupid strategy from them. I liken this to people who buy, say, a ordinary BMW, say a 520D, or ordinary Mercedes, say a C180, and then they put a M5 badge or a C63 badge on it. Here's the thing: most of the people will not the people who are not going to buy a product, don't care about your product, will never notice it. So for normal people who are not petrol heads, they will not notice that it's an M5 badge on a 520D and think you're great because you're driving an M5. They'll just think it's a 5 Series. The people who will notice it, people like me, petrol heads like me, they'll be like, what? What kind of an idiot is this putting an M5 badge on a 520D? And I will judge that person for being stupid, not the kind of person I want to associate with, right? So what I'm trying to say is what Jaguar is doing is they did something that to the majority of the audience is, they won't even notice it because it's just like anything else. But to the people who are likely to buy Jaguar, who are in the consideration set, it will really piss them off. So it's not a great move. This is attention grabbing in all the wrong ways. Point number two. Um, one comment is this Jaguar is done for. This is how the brand is fully self-destructed. I don't think the brand isn't done for, because the brand has incredible brand equity. It has incredible heritage. It has incredible history. One stupid marketing campaign cannot destroy a brand. Now, if they went down this path, continue to go down this path, and they made some very poor product choices, they could be having trouble. And I think Jaguar's biggest problem is the product. Because the issue is, even for me, I love Jaguar. The reason I always buy BMW and Mercedes, even though they're no paragons of reliability, is that long-term reliability for Jaguars is just terrible. Even here in Singapore, right? I would not dare to buy a there's so many problems. Uh, and of course, there was a time, I would say late 2000s, early 2010s, when Jaguars are very competitive on spec versus the equivalent BMW and Mercedes, and they were very good to drive. Think of the Jaguar XJ or the XF versus the equivalent 7 Series or 5 Series in the early 2010s. Now, they're not the specs, whether it is the just in terms of engine specs, just in terms of everything. It just doesn't. It's a product problem that Jaguar has at the moment. It's really not a marketing problem. So I think with the right fixes in product, which by the way I'm not confident of, because they are going down the route of doing all electric, which I have a separate point of view on, future video on this entire topic. So yes, I don't think this campaign can destroy Jaguar, but I think the product needs to be fixed before Jaguar can be fixed. Last one, and this is where we're going to get a little bit into the conspiracy side of things, at least as perceived by the internet. This is a certain ideology that is trying to be expressed, or trying to take over the Jaguar company or Jaguar brand and trying to express it. And, now it is very, very clear that this campaign is an expression of that ideology. There is no doubt. But let me get into why I don't necessarily think it is necessarily them trying to, it's not a bunch of people who are indoctrinated into ideology who have taken over Jaguar and who are trying to turn Jaguar something else. I don't necessarily think that's happening. I actually think that it's more to do with incompetence, aping trends, cowardice, trying to appear to be modern. But there is a coincidence that is important to talk about. The coincidence is this. So Jaguar, as a lot of you know, is owned by Tata. Tata is a huge Indian conglomerate of companies. It's hundreds of years old. It's a very conservative company, by the way, very conservative company. And it's the head of the company was Ratan Tata, who actually passed away 2 months ago, 1.5 months ago. I think it was 9th October, right? And the thing is this: Ratan Tata had impeccable judgment, right? He probably was a prospective, perfect Jaguar customer, just as a person who he was. And I'm not going to talk too much about him, other than to direct you to this great interview by Autocar. You can check this out, where they, not interview rather, this is his obituary by Autocar. Check it out, it'll give you a sense into who he was. And tell you that it is very, very, very unlikely, even though that Ratan Tata was no longer actively serving in Tata or like Jaguar Land Rover. He retired from the board in 2017. It is very unlikely that something like this would get past his desk, or rather, that the executives would dare to release something this horrible, this disrespectful to the brand while he was alive. Because the thing is, one of the things that stood out in his acquisition of Jaguar Land Rover is his respect for the brand, his respect for what it stood for, his respect for its Britishness, right? There could be a whole reverse colonial thing, Indian brand taking over British brand. He had nothing to do with all of that. He respected what Jaguar and Land Rover stood for. Product choices in the later years aside, right? It's just about the brand. So that is why I think it is no coincidence that this was released after Ratan Tata's death. Maybe it was on the back burner. Maybe they were planning to release it anyway. Maybe they had not shared it with him because he was not well for the last, whatever, few months of his life. But beyond the fact that they released it after Ratan Tata's death, why do I not think that this was a particular conspiracy on ideology to put that ideology that everyone's talking about forefront? Let me give you my experience, right? So the brand that I worked on, and I'm not naming any names here. You can look up. You can draw the dots. There is a very controversial bit of advertising that went out a few years ago. I think you all know what that is. Very controversial, and you would assume that the brand was taken over by a bunch of people promoting a certain ideology, and that is the reason all of this happened. It didn't happen in any of that sort of way. Not to say that the actual product of the brand did not actually bring to forward a certain ideology, but that is not what happened. What happened is that this particular brand, one of the most iconic brands of all time, was aging. It was perceived as, my father's brand, an older brand. It was not as fresh and new as the new competition, and competition had heavily disrupted this brand in a very interesting way in the mid 2010s. So the brief always was, how do we refresh the brand? How do we make it look more modern? How do we make it appeal to young people? In this internet age, post 2010, we have a lot of startups and everything. What is happening with a lot of traditional brands is that they are desperate to reinvent themselves to be relevant to a younger audience. And that's pretty much what's happened here, because what's happened here, in my opinion, I'm not an insider inside Jaguar. I'm just an insider in the branding industry, how it works. And of course, having been the head of marketing of a very iconic brand for the business unit that I worked on. So what would have happened is, this is a challenge. Now, what has happened is the branding team has been just damn lazy and incompetent to just put, hey, this is the ideology that young people apparently like. Let's pay homage to that ideology, or homage, just nod our head to that ideology. Let's virtue signal, for lack of a better word. Let's make something that looks fresh. There would be an agency who would have created a long presentation. And again, I don't blame the creative agency, because it is a creative agency's job to come up with different ideas. And if you ask somebody to make something that's very 2024, that ideology is a part of the cultural construct these days. So it is very clear that the agency will bring this as an option. It is your responsibility as a steward of the brand. And that's what irritates me so much about this campaign, because Jaguar is such a great brand. And, I worked on a very, very great brand. And I really was not fond of that one particular campaign that we referred earlier. So I took it very seriously that whatever piece of communication that I created, whatever campaign I created, it was very, very true to what the brand stood for, the brand equity, the purpose of the brand. We had long conversations on what the purpose is, whether the purpose needs to evolve, all of that. When you have something that has 100-year heritage, you have to treat it with respect. This has just been very lazy marketing. I don't even know if the person who approved this understands the Jaguar brand. First step, if you become the head of a brand, is you have to understand the brand. So for me, this was incompetent, lack of enough work done in terms of understanding the consumer, understanding insight of what is it, understanding what is the differentiating factor, and then creating a generic copy paste 2024 current modern thing, and just putting it out there, convincing management that, hey, we're going to be crazy about it, we're going to take a big bet, we're going to be bold, we're going to remove all the posts from Instagram, and we're going to make Jaguar this whole thing, because Jaguar's product is changing. It's just incompetence and cowardice, because even if there are executives who feel that, hey, this really doesn't work, they'll be like, no, but our company wants to go modern, the brand wants to go modern. If I say this is not great, I will be perceived as a bigot. They'll think that I'm not in line with being modern, I'm more stuck in some sort of old system, right? That's what I think has happened. I don't think the particular people who are doing this, especially in a conservative company like Tata, and by extension Jaguar Land Rover, would be necessarily trying to promote an ideology. It's more of they think this ideology is what makes a brand model, and they've just lazily applied it. Anyways, folks, I hope this was helpful. I will be making future videos on great marketing campaigns by car companies, starting off with the ultimate driving machine. That will be coming up next time, and I'll see you then.